Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here as always with my good friend Ryan Wallace. We're talking about the world of local recruiting from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. We'll be joined today by Mill Valley star athlete Blake Jay, one of the top players in the state over the last couple of years. Blake just committed to walk on at Kansas State for football, picking that option over baseball scholarship opportunities. You won't want to miss that. If you like what you're watching, like the video, leave us a comment below or subscribe, I should say, to follow along here on YouTube. Do all of those things. We just started a new channel here on YouTube, KCSN Varsity, and we'll have some pretty big plans for it. So follow us here to keep up with the show and any changes. If you're listening on an audio platform, you can leave us a review, a 5-star rating, wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. We have our own specific audio channel through KCSN on Apple and Spotify, so you can seek us out there. Word of mouth always helps too, so tell your friends about us. As always, we like having you guys talk about us, helping us to grow and getting us in front of more people like you. Ryan, let's go ahead and get an alarm this week.
Hey, it feels good. It's back.
For those of you new to the show in 2026, an alarm means that one of Kansas, Kansas State, or Missouri landed a commitment. And in this case, there are a couple of them. Last week, we really focused on the portal, so we didn't talk about Missouri bringing in Cardinal Ritter defensive line product, Jock Felix. There's certainly worse things than tapping into that St. Louis area powerhouse to find talent, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, this was a kid at Cardinal Ritter, big kid, ran a sub 13 in the 100 meters. I saw it like 270 plus pounds.
I'd would have liked to see that, by the way.
Yeah, as a junior in track and field, throws the javelin at like 103 as well. Super traitsy kid. The finish, what I wrote in my notes when I watched his tape, Kevin, is like the finish for him is there. How he gets to the finish, I think, may need a little bit more maturity, some polish, some development. When you think about the length and just the sheer girth that he's going to be going against in the level of the SEC. But, you know, this strikes me as a player that, yeah, if Eli Drinkwitz's staff can get him in there, kind of get him accustomed to what life is like at the college level, and again, try and develop all the raw athleticism that Jock Felix has, he could be a really nasty interior lineman for them for years to come.
Missouri signed 19 players in the early signing period and now has one player committed and ready to add to that crop when we go ahead and roll into February's National Signing Day in that second signing period. This week, Kansas State also landed a commitment.
Hey, let's do it again. Fire it up.
With the Wildcats traveling due south to pick up a big wide receiver prospect from Owasso, Oklahoma, Julius Wilson. Ryan, K-State is starting to stack up some really big-bodied guys on the outside for Colin Klein.
6'4" with a 6'8" wingspan. So there's a big target out there for future K-State quarterbacks. Texas Tech and Tulsa had both offered him originally when he committed, right before he committed Oklahoma State in November. And then obviously everything happens with Mike Gundy. He pulls back that commitment. Eric Morris either didn't call or didn't call quickly enough, because K-State offered, came in hot. OU came in, offered, and got him on a visit as well. And he ends up choosing K-State, I think, for development and how much probably he was needed in that room just as a big body guy more than anything. So I think a great opportunity for Julius Wilson to come up north from the state of Oklahoma and maybe learn under some guys like a Jerron Tibbs or a Derek Sally for a year. And again, kind of get his feet wet to hopefully really get going with the quarterback that he'll be probably working more with, which it would be whoever is behind Avery Johnson, right? I think this year is more about kind of him getting used to, again, kind of like I was saying with Jock Felix, getting used to college, finding that kind of rapport with the other guys around him, some of the younger underclassmen that are around him, and feeding off guys like Derek Sally and learning as much as you can from some of those other big-bodied receivers in that room so that he can take the baton. But yeah, a guy that can really stretch the field, contested catches. I mean, there's one catch of him in his highlights, Kevin, where he's on a full sprint. It's like I guess it'd be like a post route, right? And the throw is actually kind of at his shins. And he leans down, catches the ball, and ends up taking it like 80 yards and doesn't like miss a step. Like, this is all in stride. You would think a guy 6'4" would kind of stumble over himself when he's full sprint to go down and get one in his shins. But Julius Wilson, very, very natural. So a great target for the Kansas State Wildcats to have years to come.
Tibbs, Sally, Josh Manning, there are some worse guys to learn from if you're going to go out there and be a 6'4" wide receiver and try to pick up how things are done at the college level.
No doubt. Well, and also interesting that, they had both Wells brothers that were kind of known for their ties in Oklahoma as much as their ties in Texas. Obviously, I know Brian LePack is still on board, but you had the Wells brothers leave and they go in and get a pretty coveted player from the state of Oklahoma. So clearly it shows that K-State is not done in that state.
It's also starting to become walk-on season a little bit, Ryan.
Another
one, to preferred walk-on spots at their school of choice. Kansas State landed a couple intriguing guys there. In Junction City's Jackson Hawley got a great frame as a defensive end, and a guy that we'll have on the show here in a little bit in Mill Valley's Blake Jay, coming in as an athlete, can play multiple spots. Ryan, let's go ahead and start with Blake, because I know that you feel like he's going to follow that trend of Mill Valley walk-ons who don't play like walk-ons and come in and see the field in Manhattan.
Well, he had just about 2,400 total offensive yards and was responsible for about 32 touchdowns as a senior. And what's interesting about Blake Jay is that he's a guy that can do it from anywhere. And you see it in the highlights, right? As a senior, they needed him to be a quarterback, and it was mainly a dual threat quarterback. And so you see him here, he can take it the distance. The speed is all there. But you go back to his junior tape, he was out there at wide receiver, catching balls from Connor Bohan and like going up the ball skills very easy. And then I think what you're going to see, well, here's the toughness too, that probably doesn't get enough credit on his part. But here's where I think he's going to fit best at the college levels on defense. The instincts, right? Everything is there for him to be a really, really good defensive back. Here he is as a cornerback. He's going to come up here, get physical again, the toughness to make the tackle. I really like Blake Jay. The thing that stuck out to me about him on my notes is just he's sudden. He is so decisive with every single move that he makes because of how fast he's able to process, how ingrained into the game he is, because he's played both sides. He's played quarterback. He's played running back. He's played receiver, corner, safety, you name it. I think likely he's a safety at K-State, but again, probably athletic enough and smart enough to play on either side. He's probably going to play special teams. I don't know if this is a kid that you can throw too much on his plate and overwhelm him. I think he's the type that's saying, bring it on. Again, I mentioned the toughness is one quality that probably doesn't get enough respect. And we saw him this year, and we've seen him as a junior too. Like, he's pretty well put together for 175 pounds. He plays to me like he's 195. Reached out to Coach Joel Appleby. He's kind of a 4.5 kind of 40 kid, but I think he plays quicker than that. And I think he's going to end up becoming faster than that because, as you mentioned, like, he's a baseball kid too. He was committed to Central Missouri State to play baseball. So every time Mill Valley has gotten into that spring regimen where they're doing a lot of testing and agility data and everything, he's busy on the diamond. Now he gets to focus on football. And I think, what you'll see from his shuttle, that 5.10.5 is going to, he's going to build off that kind of speed. The 40 is going to get there. But man, I tell you, I think, Kevin, when I started to look through the safeties that Kansas State has brought on locally as walk-ons, there's a litany of them over the last few years. I mean, Mikey Bergeron, fellow Mill Valley guy, Jet Deneen, Trey Krause, Trevor Erickson from Chapman, Brock Monty, Ross Elder, Brogan Berry, Sean Newland, right? I went back ways. And then you get to a guy that I think there's a combination when I think about Blake Jay of who he becomes. And I think he's kind of a combination. And this kid was not a walk-on. I think they tried to get him as a walk-on and they had to elevate it because obviously his game spoke for itself. Morgan Burns was 5'11", 185, coming out of Wichita Trinity. Granted, the speed for him is another level of Blake Jay's, right? Like, Morgan Burns was a junior Olympian in like 8th grade in track, so he had elite speed. But I think the bodies are similar. I think you saw Morgan Burns do some stuff in return. You saw Morgan Burns, they really weren't sure where he could play. They brought him in as an athlete. He ends up becoming a corner. played some DB, right? I think Blake J is kind of a combination of Morgan Burns and Ross Elder. Ross Elder from Rockhurst, a kid that was walk-on, very heady, very traitsy. But I think Blake J brings like a boost in athleticism that Ross Elder didn't have, that's maybe a touch below Morgan Burns. And if he becomes somewhere between Ross Elder and Morgan Burns, Kevin, I tweeted about it, I posted on X, he's not just figuratively going to Manhattan. He's going to play in Manhattan. I think he's going to be a real part beyond special teams in the years to come. We could be looking at kind of the next walk-on thing, right, that evolves at K-State.
Tremendous baseball player, could have played pretty much anywhere in the MIAA, obviously, from a baseball standpoint. Baseball guys, you talk about that hand-eye coordination, obviously. One of the things that I feel like he has is a connectivity between head and feet as well. I think he could have been a good soccer player if he had decided to do that, where he makes a decision, there's not a decision-making process that travels down the body and, the feet get working. No, he's incredibly reactive and quick, and I think when you add that part to it, I think he's going to be a pretty good football player.
Hey, real quick, and I know we'll move on, but I wanted you to get a chance to just touch very quickly on Jackson Holly, the other PWO that K-State picked up from Junction City, because I actually pulled some selective highlights. All of these clips, Kevin, come against Derby, Hayes, and Wichita Northwest. So I think that kind of speaks to the type of athlete that he's become as a senior.
Yeah, I think Jackson Holly is one of the most intriguing potential walk-on guys in this class, because I think he's one of those guys you can look at sort of like a Sticks from a few years ago, where you could say, this guy's a walk-on right now, but he could be a Big 12 scholarship player as he continues to develop. And so he's what I would consider a quote-unquote like walk-on plus. And I think you and I both felt that way about Sticks as well. You see the long reach. You see the way he can disengage guys with his hands. And Ryan, he's still working on his pass rush stuff. He's still learning what to do and how to adjust his body. It's like 6'6", 215 or so, just rangy as all get out. And he's only going to get better as he has, good coaching to teach him, hey, put your hands here. Here's how here's how you plan out a pass rush. Here's the way you do this stuff. And then as the body matches up with that, when he gets up to that 245, 255 range, I think he could add that weight. He's really raw right now. But if you're saying, hey, let's bring in a guy as a walk-on and hope that he is a K-State scholarship player by his redshirt sophomore year, you could do a lot worse than Jackson Holly.
Yeah, you saw him grow big time, I thought, as a run stopper this season. When you threw him on our spreadsheet going into this season, we were used to seeing him just be more comfortable, kind of strictly wide, off the edge, trying to get around the tackle. This year, you saw him mixing up. He got a little bit more comfortable pursuing from the inside, which I thought was showed some toughness, showed some tenacity from him that he was developing, not just as a basketball player that plays football, but becoming a football player. If Buddy Wyatt can expand kind of his technique, and Jeremy Jacobs in the strength and conditioning side can get his frame to expand, you're right, Kevin. I think big upside for Jackson Holly.
That was a tough program this year too. Junction City played terrific competition all the way through it, and they gave as good as they got. And so you like getting players from that program. Let's stick with local news here just real quick. Lee's Summit North hires former Missouri player Damani Cross as head coach. Of course, Cross has an NFL background as an assistant with the Buffalo Bills and also coached at Missouri twice, including his defensive coordinator, and at Kansas. So, Ryan, what do you think of this hire for Lee's Summit North?
This is, high school wise, this is what we would call a splash hire, right? I mean, the resume speaks for itself. You mentioned NFL pedigree, Big 12. I mean, he's had stops at Iowa State, Missouri, TCU, KU, under some real quality coaches too. He was a guy that I felt like was on several hot boards of mine for K-State when Bill Snyder had openings. It was like, hey, this Damani Cross guy might not be a bad one to kind of bring back up here to the area. He's got St. Louis ties, right? But look, I think you look at this from the standpoint of our show, and we're high on recruiting, right? That's kind of our forte here. I think if you're a Lee Summit North player, and that's a program right now, as you and I both know, really everybody in the Metro recognizes it's brimming with talent, right? If you're Caleb Green, if you're Josiah Robinson, Jacob Indum, like you've got a guy, hopefully that those guys can now lean on. You would figure that he's got a lot of connections in the college world, and as a former college coach, can give them some quality guidance and mentorship, which, let's be honest, in today's day and age is kind of few and far between. So yeah, my hope is that it's a splash hire for Lee Summit North, in the sense that a good coach, really good defensive mind. He's gonna have a lot of fun with that defense, but also a guy that can really help pave the way for that school and a lot of those kids when it comes to recruiting and getting them on the right path and the best path for them in college.
High school coaches can also play a major role with players once they hit that transfer portal, because they can be sort of that go-between that helps a lot of guys out. And I bring that up, Ryan, just to say that we are going to have some transfer class talk along with our interview with Kansas State commitment Blake Jay right after this.
My name is Terrell Jolly. A lot of people call me TJ, founder and CEO of Integrity Capital Management. So Integrity Capital Management originally started out as a property management firm, but we slowly transitioned to what is described as an incremental development firm that's focused on situational housing. I know most people say affordable, but we believe in creating housing for people that are actually in need and built to the end user. I believe everyone needs a home, because when you have home, you have hope. The reality is that when you're building a business, one thing you don't think about is like what a true banking relationship means. And, I had the honor and privilege of meeting Debbie early on in my career when I was just trying to get going. And as a small business, it's really challenging at times because people don't understand the concept or not believe the longevity because you're just getting started. But Debbie was willing to take a chance on me, be patient with me. I almost look at it like a grassroots initiative. She's seen and believe what I'm about. Anybody that's really true about their business and want to get some things done, I would definitely trust hands down Emprise, because Deb's team, along with Aaron and Jackie and all the amazing people that work behind the scenes, even from the treasury side, I would say, hey, give them an opportunity, because you won't be disappointed and you will actually be in hands that actually somebody care and that will see you from start to finish.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. A quick reminder that you can follow along with us on Twitter/X at verbalcommit_KC for clips from the show, conversations about local players, and even the odd highlight. Last episode, we talked about some of our favorite players in the transfer classes at Kansas and Kansas State. So let's go ahead and take sort of an updated look at where each school's transfer class sits right now. As friend of the show, Michael Swain says, you have to timestamp this. So we're talking on Wednesday night. If any of these three schools have added players by the time you're watching or listening to this, let's go ahead and pull Missouri up first and take a look at Missouri's class. The Tigers have you've got Ryan did this graphic just beautifully. You can see the number of guys in, that's 19, versus the number of guys out, 24. Their top rated prospect is Austin Simmons, quarterback at Ole Miss. Obviously a must get with the quarterback movement that they had there. No real local names. When you look at the position where they've added the most guys, defensive back, and it feels like Oregon defensive back could be almost a side note there. They have not added any tight ends. Ryan, what kind of stands out to you so far about this group?
Well, two quick things when you see these, because we'll go through Missouri, K-State, and KU on these graphics. The top rated is a tough one. I tried to go what kind of meet in the middle between what 24/7 has and what On3 has, and kind of whoever, the best average, highest average ranking is kind of where I landed for some of that. But it's a little bit all over the board, as you might imagine, and how different sites and guys want to rate transfers. But in terms of, one other thing real quick, since we've got it pulled up, you'll see the margins between 24/7's rankings and the On3 rankings there at the bottom. And obviously the first number is where they are nationally. The second number is where they are in their respective league. So this is 9th in the SEC, 15th in the SEC, the margin there between 24/7 and on three is enormous.
Yes.
And I think that's because it's kind of a, where do you side? 24/7 seems to grade guys just, they kind of look back at their high school film. They kind of look back at what they did in college. And I feel like they are kind of do like a brand new player rating in a way. And then obviously they look at your full team rating and, merge all that together. With on three, they do an interesting thing, which again, kind of unique. But it's their transfer team portal index utilizes, I'm going to read this verbatim just so our folks know, on three performance score to measure a team's production during the transfer process compared relative against its roster and not a comparison against other schools. So it's a proprietary algorithm that determines if a school basically has improved its overall team talent, stayed the same, or declined. And so again, when you look at some of the graphics that we have, like they have Missouri very low because they feel like the guys that they've lost versus the guys they brought in maybe are not, they haven't gotten as good of a return. Whereas 24/7 is looking at it, this is a top 25 class, just looking purely at the individuals when you put them all together into a class.
Yeah.
Okay.
You lose a Damon Wilson, right? And you're probably not going to replace Damon Wilson with another Damon Wilson,
Right.
And you look at, Bo Prabula did some good things this year, obviously wound up getting hurt, was a little up and down at times. Austin Simmons has a lot of ability, but was hurt this past year. And you saw Ole Miss kind of take off with his replacement, obviously. And so, yeah, that's kind of the way that weighs out, I think, a little.
Sure. So, yeah, just pick your poison, whichever side you kind of tend to lean towards. Most fans are going to lean towards whoever's, if my highest ranking is at 24/7, I'm going to go with them. But anyway, that's why some of those numbers look a little off. But getting into the Tigers class, though, real quick, defensive back, they've been hammering on it, and they've gotten some really key ads just in the last 48, 72 hours with Elijah Dotson, the safety out of Michigan. You mentioned Oregon. They've got, what is it, just one or two now from Jaleel Florence and the Lalia guy. Both big time in terms of their frame, big corners, and guys that should fit into that defensive backfield really well. But I got to admit, Kevin, I like you lose Josh Manning and some other guys there, and I was thinking, man, I hope Drinking Company kind of know what they're doing. They pick back up, Horatio Fields, Caleb Goody. You got a chance to see him in person against KU this year. He's a really good weapon. So again, go figure, Missouri's offense seems to be reloading once again.
Yeah, I also want to say real quick too, and this isn't trying to be a knock on anybody. I think when you look at the rankings processes, Ryan, and you and I have been involved with rankings processes in the past, you look to where their efficiencies sometimes, what are they doing really, really well? What are they maybe not doing as efficiently? And I still think transfer grading, when you have it just as a straight up, this guy is rated an 84, this guy is rated a 92, I think that's a little bit of an inefficient process right now for them. You don't have as many people within the team working on it. And so the good part of that is that, you only have one person working at it, so they know, kind of what everything is. The bad part about it is you don't have as many smart people making the same grades, and it's just impossible to hop around and say, okay, I'm rating this guy from Missouri this. Oh, wait, NC State just got a guy. Let me rank that guy.
Right.
You got this guy across the country. And I think the other big part, Ryan, is a lot like junior college transfers. When you bring in somebody in the portal, typically, and I'm not saying you don't ever take multi-year guys, but typically you're going out and getting guys that you want to play early on. And so you're going out to get guys who are fits for your system, who can play right away. And so if you're just rating that guy in a vacuum and saying, this guy is an 85, full stop, maybe you're missing the fact that, well, he might be an 85 if these 10 schools are looking at him. But if you're looking at Colorado and what they do defensively, this guy is exactly what they look for in a boundary safety type of
Right. So you lean on three is what you're telling me.
I like that formula. It's interesting, right? Like it's a little bit different. I'm not saying that it's correct. I'm just saying it's a different way of looking at it.
I like that that Dawn 3 is at least experimenting with a different way to look at the transfer portal versus, well, we do it for recruits this way. Let's do it for the transfer portal this way. I'm with you. I like that it's a different process, right? Trying to grade transfer portals. Look, you and I have a hard enough time ranking high school kids. Thank God I'm not trying to rank transfer portal guys.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Transfers in, transfers out.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, let's go ahead and move on to Kansas State at this point. How do you feel like, as somebody that's more tied in at Kansas State, how do you feel like K-State's class is kind of shaking out?
Well, we mentioned, I think it was just a week ago, that they're going to have to get into the trenches a little bit more. They had kind of loaded up at defensive back a little bit and some other skill positions. Obviously, getting Harrison Fields at running back to pair with Joe Jackson, like all that was looking great. But then they've gone out, I feel like, in the last week and really hammered defensive line, as you see there, with the most additions of any position group at 6, Wendell Gregory being one of those, which was a massive get for them. And again, my guys on the beat will know better than me. I'm trying to keep up as best I can, but I don't even know if he visited. So that's like an even bigger win, I feel like.
And you followed him up with Elijah Hill, right? From Kansas State.
Right. Just done a really, really terrific job with the defensive line. I like that they're the one school that's been getting into some local names, bringing Joshua Manning, or keeping him kind of quote home in the area, bringing Keaton Jones back across state line from Missouri. It's becoming a really nice class. The other thing too that I think and there's been plenty of reporting done on it very well by a lot of the K-State beat to this point. I like the way that K-State is kind of attacking this portal season. They're kind of going about it in a way that is interesting from the standpoint that I think Colin Klein and that staff knows we got to rebuild this program, right? And as you were just saying, typically I feel like, let's say 80%, that might be too high. But like 80% of most coaches out there, you're attacking the transfer portal for like your most pressing needs. You are trying to get guys that can come in and help your team right away. And I admire the fact that Colin Klein came in and said, yeah, we're going to hit on a couple of those, the Josh Manning, a Wendell Gregory, those guys we're going to throw in right away. But he's also had to look at this and say, yeah, but we lost a lot of guys. And I want to build this program up also the way that me and my staff see fit. We need to look at some guys that we like the upside, but also we're going to have for multiple years. And so they've done a really nice job in this class because they've kind of been forced to, but also in being forced to, they've done a really good job of evaluating guys that are capable of coming in and providing quality depth, if not possibly starting material, while also having more than 1 year of eligibility left to work with. So I think that's huge. The only other point, and then I'll toss it back to you, Kevin, that I wanted to make is you saw in the graphic where it said 0 tight ends. And I know it's like, well, no, duh. Like they've got Garrett Oakley coming back. They've got Will Ancio coming back. They've got Lincoln Cure. But, they're bringing in Arlie Morrell. But I also thought that kind of, to me, showed a sign that Brian LePack likes this room. Yeah. Because, again, Colin Klein's staff could have come in and said, like, look, we have no – some of those guys they did recruit, but like, we don't have to keep anybody. Like we've seen, like we can quote cut kind of anybody that we want to, or help guide them in another area. The fact that they decided to keep every single tight end there, give or take 2 that, left, I think on their own accord. That seems to me to say, okay, not only does Brian LePack like these guys and want to retain these guys, we think this is a good enough room where we don't need to go out and really entertain a lot of other tight ends. So I thought that was an interesting takeaway that I've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. And when we get to KU, we'll have the same conversation about quarterbacks, right? In terms of them saying, hey, we like our room. We're not going to go get a guy, even though numbers wise, you lose a guy, you say, okay, we should replace that guy. They said, no, we're good. We're going to stand pat. The tight end thing is interesting. And I like your point about you're rebuilding the entire foundation of
Right.
the program. And I'm not saying, Kleiman didn't leave anything, or I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying you're rebuilding with multi-year guys. A Keaton Jones is somebody that I think if you're Kansas State, and this isn't a knock on Keaton, you probably don't want him playing this year. You want him continuing to develop. But Keaton has a lot of ability. And so you look, in 2027, 2028, this is a guy that could really be an anchor of your line, and you've got another multi-year guy that's really talented in there. And so I do think that K-State has done a really nice job getting a mixture of, okay, it's the last year of Avery. Our frontline guys got to be there. We can't waste this year. But at the same time, we don't want to have to hit the reset button right away, right again. We want to have sort of this next layer of guys coming up as well, and they've done a really nice job of that.
Exactly. You nailed it. You don't want to – you could go out and get a lot of one-year guys, and then you're going to be doing this all over again. So, again, really, really nice job by Colin Klein and the staff, and I don't think they're done.
To some extent, Kansas is starting over again. When you look at the really big senior class that they had 2 years ago with Devin Neal and all of those guys that went out, and they replaced those guys, a lot of them, with some experienced one-year guys like Justice Finkley, Emmanuel Henderson, because they had Jalen Daniels and said, hey, we don't want to waste this year with Jalen Daniels and, LeSean Williams, Bowden Gruen. You brought in all of these guys who were one-year guys, Bengali Kamara being another one. And then those guys graduate, and now Kansas has another big transfer class. And so if we can pull up Kansas right now, the Jayhawks lost 26 guys out, and that's not including the senior class. That's through the portal as well. And that kind of knocked out some of that young depth that you were talking about, Ryan. And so Kansas had to go into the portal heavy once again, has 28 commitments right now. You see on the defensive line, I actually thought the defensive line for Kansas was a strength heading into the portal, Ryan, but I think they've really reinforced that with this group, getting 6 defensive line signees. They had to rebuild that defensive tackle room around Blake Harold, around Marcus Calvin, and I really think they've done a nice job of doing that.
And the one team, Kevin, that seems to be a consensus between 24/7 and On 3, I don't know if that's a good sign. I don't know if that's a bad sign, but it's interesting. I wanted to ask you, though, kind of picking apart this graphic, what surprises you most? Because there's a couple things on here that to me were surprising, right? And I don't know which surprises me more. The quarterback conversation that we were just having, the fact that they have chosen not to go out and pursue a quarterback, the fact that they wanted to bolster a defensive line that seemed pretty good as is and beefing it even more, or the fact that Kansas has lost 26 players transfer out, which again was kind of on par, if not ahead of K-State for a while there. And you don't expect that when you're retaining or when your head coach is not retiring or leaving and there isn't coaching staff shakeup. I didn't know between those three, again, kind of from an outsider looking in perspective, those were 3 things that were kind of like, whoa, didn't expect that from Kansas in the portal window.
Yeah, and Kansas did a nice job of retaining most of its quote-unquote high-tier guys, I guess you would say. Obviously, we're still waiting to find out what's happening with Trey Lathan. But if Kansas brings back Trey Lathan, if they're able to do that, then, again, friend of the show Michael Swain wrote an article saying these are the 6 guys that I would most like for KU to retain. KU got 5 of those guys back, and Lathan's the 6th. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, you look at it and you say, okay, job pretty well done there. I think one of the interesting things to me is Lance Leipold and the staff, Ryan, have been one of the best staffs, not just in the Big 12, but in the country at retaining guys. They haven't had the movement that a lot of programs have. And I get that we're in this era in college football and some things happen just because, hey, this guy wants more money and this guy wants more opportunity. And with earnings and things like that, guys don't want to sit for 3 years when they can hop into the portal and go somewhere else and potentially get a jump start on that. And so I get that there's more movement in college football overall. It still strikes me as abnormal for this Kansas program that has prided itself so much on retention, on communication, and all of the things that go with it, and sort of keeping that family thing going. As far as the quarterback thing goes, Ryan, obviously both of us really like David McComb. He was one of the first visitors on our show in general, and both of us really like the talent level there. When David McComb left, I wondered if they would go into the portal to get a guy, whether it's a young guy to develop or whatever else, because Lance Leipold had said on signing day that they liked their quarterback room. They liked the guys in there, but you lost a guy like McComb. I think what's interesting here is, yes, you're down one guy because you lose Jalen Daniels, you bring in Jalen Mason. So they essentially cancel each other out. So you're out the McComb guy, but the one who makes this kind of an interesting conversation in that quarterback room, because you think the starter is going to be either Cole Ballard or Zeke Marshall, I think, Ryan, is one Mikey Pauley, because Mikey Pauley was a guy who was a scholarship level kid out of high school, right? KU offered him, Nebraska offered him.
You and I pushed for that. Yeah, for sure.
He actually wound up going to Nebraska on scholarship. And when he came back to KU, it was as a preferred walk-on. But if you're looking and saying, do we have enough scholarship quarterbacks on there? You can look at Mikey Pauley and say, we have a scholarship caliber quarterback. And Mikey Pauley actually worked some with the tight ends last year, about halfway through the season and on. But you move him back into that quarterback room, and it's like your numbers are back equal where you have the same number of scholarship players.
Good point. Well said across the board.
So yeah, that's an interesting part to me. The one fascinating thing to me, and I'm not saying that I don't like this transfer class, because I do. They needed to hit on depth a lot, and so your money is obviously going to get spread out because you're getting a lot of different guys. And I think some guys like, Trayvon McAlpine are really, really good. Corey Gordon Jr., the safety they got from Louisville, is really good. But what I'm saying, Ryan, is last year there were a couple guys in that class that I felt like when KU got them, this guy is an immediate upper tier guy. And I felt that about Trey Lathan. I thought Lyric Rawls had a chance to be that guy. Emmanuel Henderson was a guy that, Nick helps us here on the show. Nick and I both thought this guy is wide receiver one from the second he came in from Alabama.
Yeah, and he was.
I think, and KU did get Nick McMillan, who I think is probably going to be their wide receiver one. But I don't know that you're seeing guys in this class that are as many quote unquote upper tier guys where you say this guy is going to be a high level Big 12 player right from the word go, as maybe you saw it in last year's class. I could be wrong about it, but that's one of my takeaways looking at this group.
Last but not least, Kevin, I just wanted to quickly point out, I'm trying to kind of update it as we go, day by day, as best I can. I'm sure there's still a lot of players that you and I just haven't seen post, or I wish we had access to the portal as my light falls here. The local portal guys, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to see a lot of those spots closed. Dylan Edwards is still probably the big fish that's still kind of out left on the market, I would say, from the Power 4 names. We did have some new names jump in the mix here just since our last show. Nick Herzog, former Blue Valley Tiger, officially in the portal from Northwestern, an offensive lineman. Another offensive lineman, Cooper Lovelace, well-traveled, former Shawnee Mission East Lancer, is in the portal most recently from Colorado. And a big one for us, and a more recent name, decided to jump into the portal from Utah, Drew Clemens.
Yes.
And remember, we saw him a year ago at Oak Park, and we're like, whoa, this is a top 10 player on the Missouri side for us. Really, really good tight end. So again, talked about like Missouri, 0 tight ends, K-State, 0 tight ends. I don't know if they would make room for Drew Clemens, but like if they did, I don't think you and I would bat an eye at it, right? Really good player, but just from the Power 4 level, and obviously we're continuing to post the guys from the FCS and the Group of 5 as well, but those are kind of the big names that I would say are still on the market. And actually, just as we got on to record tonight, McGuire Richmond announced that he's headed to Northwest Missouri State In case you missed it, Caden Massey from K-State heading to James Madison. And then I think the only other one that's kind of happened since our last show would have been Charlie Wolleben heading to Missouri S&T. So that's kind of where things shake out locally.
I would not expect Charlie Wolleben to stay at Missouri S&T very long if he does not want to stay at Missouri S&T. That's not a knock on Missouri S&T. That kid's a Big 12 caliber athlete. And so once he gets that game tape, we talked about game tape a lot in our last episode. You guys should go check that out. I think Charlie Wolleben could have a chance to be upwardly mobile if he so chooses. We'll be right back with Kansas State commitment Blake J right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast. We're joined by Mill Valley athlete Blake J, who committed to Kansas State earlier today. Blake, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me.
Blake, some people have to figure out what position they're going to play in college, and I'm sure we'll get there with you in just a minute. But you had a little bit bigger decision in that you had to pick what sport you wanted to play in college. If you could kind of walk us through that decision a little bit and ultimately why you wound up choosing to play football at Kansas State.
Yeah, so coming in, I've a lot of my summertime, a lot of activity I've spent over the years has been more baseball oriented. Haven't gone to a whole lot of football camp. It's been more, like I've said, all baseball stuff. So my whole summer doing that for my summer team. Honestly, missing a lot of football stuff with the team for baseball. So coming into my senior year, I was talking to UCM. I had committed there verbally. And so that was my plan, coming into the season, through the season, that was the plan, a couple of schools for football talking to me, texting me, wanting me to come up here and there, but nothing a whole lot, nothing too big. And then, just recently, honestly, the other day, K-State came in, talked to me, had a great talk with them and decided to commit.
During that conversation, I'm curious kind of who was on the other end of the texting and the calls with Kansas State. And was there anything like specifically that was said on their side that, kind of had you hang up the phone and maybe you turned to your parents and said, maybe we need to sit down and like actually think about this? There had to have been kind of a light bulb moment for you, right?
Yeah. So Taylor Brett was the guy that called me. He texted me earlier that morning, just wanted to get on the phone. And, I was pretty busy during the day. So kind of somebody to schedule later that night to talk. But he picked up the phone, great guy, very personable. Very likable guy. Just kind of talked to him and told me that they had a spot for me, and they didn't know what position it would be, but it would just be they have a spot. Let me kind of figure out what I can do, what I can help the team with, and I had so much fun playing this year. I didn't really know what football was going to be like for me. I thought coming in, I thought I was going to be playing a whole different position, and things just kind of worked out how they did, and I got lucky. Coach Appleby has done so much for me. He probably set up this call with the coach, to be honest, it was more him than it was me, but he really did a lot for me. And, the coach was just so nice to me. And they did enough, and is a very likable person to where, after the phone call, I, went down to my mom, told her what was going on. She was excited. My dad is ecstatic. He came home and he couldn't believe it. So it was just awesome to see their reactions as much as mine.
In Mill Valley, obviously, you guys are so used to competing for state titles and winning state titles. But was there something special about the win over Aquinas this year? The way that it happened, how close we had Hayden Heller on our show as the player of the week after that goal line stop. But you had a terrific game in that one as well. Did that game have a little bit of extra sort of oomph for you guys with the way that you won that one?
Yeah. So, coming off of last year, we all know how that felt. That was just stuck in our brain, stuck in our heart, honestly, that whole year. Throughout the weight room and stuff, we knew how much that game meant to us. But honestly, through the week, our coaches just telling us just another game. They're kids, they're human too. It's just going to be, a regular game. And in the back of our minds, we know what the game means. But coming out, we just had game plan wise, we were all set. Stone Zambo coming in clutch for us there. We're really thankful for that kid, man. He caught some stuff that wasn't very easy, but he did his job for us. And especially switching positions from last year, playing a little bit of defense, a little bit of offense, to playing all offense this year. I just felt like it was a big moment for me to like win that game with my teammates, with all the coaches. Knowing how hard we worked, it meant a lot to us.
You were talking about the transition that you've had back and forth, and earlier in the show, in our first segment, we showed some highlights of you. You've played quarterback, running back, corner, safety, receiver, kick returner, punt returner. Like, is there one position that you do feel like you maybe excel or your skill set fits best, and or maybe it's just a position that you feel like you have the most fun playing?
Yeah, so honestly, I mean, most fun, through the Mill Valley offense, quarterback is just nice because, I get the ball a lot. I get a lot to, get to do a lot. I really love playing receiver, though. Receiver, I hadn't really played it my whole life growing up. I'd always played quarterback. My dad was the coach, so I was just kind of, coach's kid playing quarterback. Everybody's thinking that. So it was really fun playing quarterback growing up and everything. But whenever, like, I'm going out with my friends, we play, recess football or whatever, I'd always want to play receiver because I like catching passes, jumping up for it, catching it one-handed. That was always really fun. So when I got the opportunity this past year or the year before from Coach Appleby telling me, I started out as a corner, and that was fun. I was really bad. I have a terrible technique, but our coaches really helped me out there, so I was thankful for that. But receiver is just something different. Going to get balls, running routes against guys, and even blocking. I'm not very good at blocking yet, but even blocking is fun for me because I got to go hit somebody. So I really enjoy playing receiver.
I'm sure that versatility was something that kind of drew K-State to you through the process. But have they talked to you at all about where they see you or where they see you at least starting off your career?
Yeah, so through the call, he talked to me and he really just said that they didn't really know whether it was, safety, whether it was receiver, maybe even quarterback. I think he was just telling me quarterback to, get me excited, to get my spirits up and stuff. But it was nice to hear that. So, honestly, they'll all play, wherever they want me to. Special teams, wherever's needed for the team works for me.
Blake, you're a middle infielder on the diamond. We talked about all the different positions that you can play in football. That has to be a nod to your cerebral, right? Like, the sports and like kind of picking up game plans and everything, like, is that just always come quick to you? Because the job of a quarterback and the job of a middle infielder, there's a lot that's going through your brain at all points of a game, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, for me, it's just, I do a lot better, like in the moment type stuff. Like, obviously you watch film, you prepare, you pregame and everything. But for me, it's more of an in the moment, seeing what's happening, reading defenders, reading how they're doing, like on the baseball side of things. I kind of see where the guy's lined up in the batter's box, see if he's going to pull it, see if he's late or something, so I can see where I line up. So, it's not too hard. I've had my coaches through the years have been phenomenal since I was a little kid. They taught me so much stuff to where, you just go out there and play, you do your best, and, things will just come naturally.
Have you talked to any other members of the sort of Mill Valley factory that are in Manhattan about what their experiences have been like and how much they enjoy it there?
I haven't just yet. I've been communicating with LaMarcus Barber, obviously.
Yeah.
I let him know, called him last night. I told him that this was something that might happen. Told him not to tell anybody, just between me and him. So he's pretty excited. I'm pretty thankful for that. Haven't talked to any of those guys yet, but I'll definitely need to talk to guys like Mikey Bergeron. That'll be one of the most recent guys, him and Gus Hawkins. Just kind of ask those guys what it's like up there, what life is going to be like. So.
What is kind of next for you? Obviously, I know baseball season's lurking. That'll feel a little different this year, but at the same time, you guys are coming off a 6A state appearance last year, 120 games. You've got the 6A player of the year coming back. This Bo Peterson kid, Kevin, I don't know if you know, but like you and I think Blake Jay is the most athletic kid in Mill Valley. This Bo Peterson kid might have something to say about that. But, is that something now that maybe you can look forward to a little bit more stress-free this spring?
Yeah, me and my family were just talking about this. It's always been, you want to go into the season, go into the summer, you want to do your best, you want coaches to see you. But, now that, I'm playing football, it's just kind of like, you go out there, you just get to kind of play. Like, there's not really much stress. No one's out there watching you too much. And, thankfully we've got a heck of a team this year. Our infield's incredible, our outfield's incredible, pitching staff, we're pretty loaded. I would say we're pretty set. And yeah, Bo Peterson definitely helps a lot on the baseball diamond. So
I'm going to ask you for a little bit of a scouting report on the Mill Valley running game from this year, because you had yourself, obviously Reggie was banged up, but let's think of Reggie being healthy for this. Max Piva running behind LaMarcus Barber. I mean, what do you feel like that was like being a part of that, and also watching those other guys kind of do what they do best?
Yeah, so the whole issues with Reggie is really kind of the dagger to the heart for me, because I know how hard he works. I know he really wanted the season to be something special, especially for colleges, for his his future. But Max stepped it up like crazy, and Max and Reggie, I mean, pretty neck and neck. Reggie has, he's an incredible running back. He's an incredible kid, and Max just stepped up this year and had a great season. But yeah, following those guys, you're watching LaMarcus Pohl, and he's going to beat everybody in his way. And every single time I can just run right behind him. He's there. Our tight ends did great. Elliott Fisher and Stone Zambo, they were just always there for me. And I like to run, obviously more outside, don't want to run in those D-line. Those are some pretty big guys, especially Aquinas. That was quite the D-line there. But our offensive line just had a heck of a season, and following those guys, I couldn't ask for anybody better, man. Those guys worked their heart out for me, and I really, really, truly owe them everything from this year.
Just full disclosure, when we went out to your Mill Valley 7-on-7 this summer, as we do every year, we saw Reggie Reese, and we thought he was a college kid. We didn't recognize him from the previous year. We thought, oh, one of like the 23-year-old former Mill Valley guys must be back right now. It seemed like he really put in a lot of work this offseason.
Yeah, he got big. I mean, I see him in the hallways. I just saw him. Might not have been today. Might have been yesterday. No, it was today. He's coming out of class. And I mean, he just makes me look like a pipsqueak. I'm nothing compared to what he is. He's really put in a lot of work, and I know his issue with his knees will be resolved, and he'll be just fine. So wherever he ends up, whether he stays at Northwest or something else happens, he's gonna do something special.
Well, Blake, one more from me. Kevin has kind of teased it. You mentioned all the guys that are at K-State, and I mean, there's guys from Mill Valley that have gone on to play at four-year colleges, even if it's not K-State. Now you and LaMarcus have kind of had your turn now. When you think about the guys, either the class below you or even guys that are sophomores currently, that'll be juniors next year, who kind of comes to mind for you that might be next for you guys to kind of hand the baton to as that next kind of college prospect?
Yeah, so the biggest guys for me on the offensive side are, definitely Max Piva. I mean, that kid, I just know he's going to do something special. He had a crazy year this year, really help the team. Holden Appleby, athletic kid, tall. He's got the tools that he's going to get it done. On the defensive side, LJ, he's a great player. He's fast. He's smart. He knows where to be. Kendon Charbonneau is just an athlete, man. He's going to get it done. So those guys, Ryder Farley too. I mean, Ryder's not a big guy, but he makes up for it in his strength. It's really impressive, and he's smart. He's probably one of the smartest guys on the team. Those guys, I know, whether it's, going to play somewhere big or going to play somewhere small where they can play right away, those guys are going to make an impact wherever they're at.
Yeah, Ryder tires out the announcers, whichever game he's playing. Tackled by Ryder. And so, yeah, Coach Appleby had mentioned him when we came out and saw you guys and said, hey, keep an eye on this guy. And then you just hear his name called over and over and over again, which is cool to see for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Blake, for stopping by. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard, leave us a comment or review, like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.